I asked Jona from One Pip Wonder to recommend to me one game that I would then buy, play, and review on the channel here. I'm super excited to show you guys what game they recommended and tell you all about what I thought. Before we get to my review, first of all, I want to tell you guys the game that I recommended Jona is Aeon's End, specifically Aeon's End Legacy, and if you've played this game, you know that it's fantastic. Jona brings some of the most loving and authentic energy here in the board game space, as well as a completely unique perspective, so make sure you give their channel a subscribe. And to everybody who's watching this video from One Pip Wonder's channel, thank you so much for joining. We're so happy to have you. If you haven't heard, we are Being Friends, and my name is Evan. We are a channel dedicated to sharing with you how board games are a fantastic way to connect with others. We believe that the way that they bring people together is unlike anything else, and so we want to spread that message. Jona, if you were to recommend to me one game, which one would it be?
Hi everybody, I'm Jona from One Pip Wonder, and my game recommendation for Evan is Western Legends. This is a sandbox game and you are playing historical Western characters. To win the game, you have to get the most legendary points. And there's so many ways to get legendary points. You can pan for gold, you can rob one of the other characters, you can arrest a wanted character, you can, go to the saloon and gamble. Just anything you can think of that happened in a spaghetti western, you can do. There are different tracks that you can kind of go on and try and get further up those tracks. Those help you get more legendary points to win the game, but that also can put a target on your back for other players to come after you. So you have to really try different things every time you play. And it's just so fun. I am a big Western fan. I love Western films. So when I play it with my friends, we put on, really cheesy Western music and just have a blast with it. I hope Evan and his friends have a blast too. I'm really excited to hear what he thinks about this game.
So here we are. I got Western Legends right here. This is a sandbox game where everybody is competing to be essentially the most legendary in the Wild West, and that idea already is just making me so excited. I love the idea of getting immersed in this setting with a bunch of friends around the table. This is gonna be so much fun. Let's set this game up. It's literally the Wild West on a board, in a game, on a board game. So this is Western Legends set up right here. In this game, you can do anything that you want, anything that you can imagine. If you were in the Wild West, you can mine for gold, you can become an outlaw and rob the bank, you can become a sheriff and arrest those players who robbed the bank, you can drive cattle, you can kill bandits, you can do whatever you want, and the game does a really good job at making you feel that way. I've played this game just 2 times, so this is maybe more of a first impressions video, but I have a lot of impressions about the game, and I have a pretty good idea about who the game is for, what I like about it, and what I don't like about it. So make sure you stick around to the end because I'm going to share with you all of that. Let's say you're playing this game for the first time. What do you need to know? In Western Legends, you get to play the role of many of these characters and you tell the story the way that you would like to. Characters like Annie Oakley, Doc Holliday, or with the character I chose, Jesse James, and they all play slightly differently with a special ability and start with different items. For instance, Jesse James, he starts with an upgraded revolver and he actually is wanted from the beginning of the game, and he has a special ability that lets him perform better in a fight outside of town. Compare that to Bloody Knife, who is a Native American. He starts with a normal revolver, a couple extra cards, and he has a special ability that's super cool. There are a couple different areas on the board that are mesas, and those are areas that you can't move through. You actually have to move around them, but Bloody Knife has the ability that lets him move into that space and heal while he is in that area. It completely changes the game, and all these characters have a slight little flair in that way that gives them something unique to work with. Apart from that, the rest of the choice is yours. You get to decide your fate, your story, and how you go about this is going to determine how legendary you can become. So you have the premise. You are in the Wild West and your goal is to become legendary. And then you have the means. How do you do this? There are actually a lot of ways. And that's what this game promises. It says, we are a sandbox game where you're in the Wild West and you can do whatever you want to become legendary. So I'm excited about that idea quite a bit. It kind of puts thematics and mechanics together in a way that's really, really exciting, because it says, here's the theme. You could do anything you want. Here's how you do it, and that's where the mechanics come in. So this game is actually a fairly simple game. I think that a lot of people can get the hang of the game. Because there are so many actions, it might be kind of difficult to learn at the front end, but I think that they're simple enough and they mostly just make enough sense. So after a few rounds, I think it'll become pretty clear and natural how the game goes. The flow is simple, and overall I think the game is quite elegant. So on your turn, you basically just take 3 actions. Those actions can be any combination of moving, using a location's special action, and fighting another player in your space. Just doing whatever you can, again, to become the most legendary. With so many things you can do in all of these different places on the board, the question then becomes, how do I become legendary? How do I get these so-called legendary points? There are a lot of ways, but the answer mostly lies in these 2 tracks on the board here. This is the Wanted track, and this is the Marshal track. You're going to be, over the course of the game, gaining either Wanted points or Marshal points, depending on if you do things that are illegal or essentially good and lawful. These function quite differently, and the way that they function creates one of the most interesting parts of this game for me. I'll start by explaining the Marshal track. Every single time that you gain a Marshal point, you basically just go up on this track. And every single space that you progress on is going to get you something special, either some money, 20 bucks, or some points. And every 3 is going to be more and more points. If you do a lot of things that are lawful, you're going to get a lot of points and a lot of money along the way as well. It's a good gig. You're a legend if you're that good of a sheriff. But come over here to the Wanted track. The Wanted track is quite different, and the difference is what makes this game work. This is what makes the game shine, in my opinion. As you gain Wanted points, you're going to get a few special bonuses along the way, but the biggest reward is that you gain, depending on the level, 1, 2, or 3, you gain that many points every single turn. Imagine having gotten 5 Wanted points. From at that point on, you're going to be gaining 2 points every single turn, and what that means is all you have to do to become a legend is not get caught. This is brilliant because this is the fastest way to actually get a ton of points in this game. So if you can become Wanted really quickly, 1, you're going to be getting a lot of points, but 2, you become a target. Every single other player is going to look at you and say immediately, no, we're going to have to try to catch you now. And the Marshal players specifically are going to be running around the board chasing this player just to arrest them. And even though you don't get any money for catching them, every single Marshal in the game is going to want to catch you. So being a Marshal is a good gig, and you can get a lot of points and money by doing those things. But when you're wanted, you're wanted. And to me, the idea that if you're more wanted and the longer that you last on the run, you're going to become a true legend. I just love that idea so much, and it creates such a fun dynamic for the players. You're going to watch everyone doing all sorts of different things. Maybe they'll be mining for gold. Maybe someone's going to fight some bandits. That guy's going to become more of a Marshal and whatnot. But then somebody robs a bank, gains a bunch of Wanted points, and starts getting points every single turn. The entire table is paying attention. So in Western Legends, they promise you can do whatever you want, but they forgot to tell you that you're going to want to do different things depending on what everybody else is doing. This town ain't big enough for the 3, 2, 6 of us. Some of my favorite board games have this feeling where you're doing things on your turn and you're having a lot of fun, but then the opponent's turns, you're paying a close attention just to know what they're doing, what they're up to, and this game does that really well. I feel like everybody's turn matters for me, and that's really exciting to me. There are 3 different ways you can fight a player, and the difference is really cool mechanically, but also kind of the same thing plays out, but the feeling of it is entirely different. You can either rob a player, stealing their stuff, but becoming wanted in the meantime, which is probably a good thing. You can arrest a wanted player, which gives you Marshal points and stops those wanted players from getting too legendary too fast. And this is great. You can just have a duel. It's the Wild West after all. Of course, you can fight them just for glory, and the winner of the fight just gets a legendary point. There was nothing on the line but you became more legendary for winning the duel. And the fight plays out exactly the same as any fight. Whether the fight is between players or an NPC like this bandit here, the fight's the same. You play a card face down, the player plays a card face down, whoever has the higher one wins the fight. They all have special abilities as well, so the combat does feel engaging besides who had the higher card. And all the fights are the same. You do that, you see who won. But the feeling that you get when you're in a duel versus robbing a player versus defending yourself so you don't get arrested, it is all completely different, both because of the narrative beats that are happening there, but also the context around it. The outcome of the fight is different, so the fight itself feels different. And that is something that I really love in a game, when you're doing similar things, but they feel different because of that context switch. The deck of cards that every player uses is basically just a deck of 52 cards with some special abilities on each different card, and this deck of cards right here is what you use for almost everything. Like I said, you both play a card if you're in a fight, and whoever has the higher card wins, resolving any special abilities, such as the Queen of Hearts is a quick draw, and if you're fighting an NPC and you play the quick draw, you get to cancel whatever the bandit's ability was because you killed them way before they could even do it. Or maybe you played an 8. What this does, and this is great, it basically just cancels the results of that fight and you do it completely again. And that can completely thwart someone's plans to arrest you because they used their ace on that. Or maybe they saw it coming and used a lower card and saved their higher card for that moment. Who knows? Plus, outside of combat, all the different cards do different things, such as give you extra movement or help you if you're playing poker. All of the different aspects of this game are driven by this deck of cards. And this is perfect. There is nothing wrong with this deck of cards here. I love it so much. The abilities are fun to use. The cards are fun in the fights. Every turn, at the beginning of your turn, you can either draw a card or gain $10 2 times. So you can get 2 cards or $20 or a combination of the 2. So that's one way you can get money. You can also get money from selling the gold that you got from mining. You could also get money from becoming a marshal. You could also get money from driving cattle sometimes. You could also get money from robbing a bank. There are so many ways to get money, and by the end of the game, you're gonna have a lot of it. And the ways you can spend it are kind of limited. This is all items you can buy with the money. There's not a ton of options here. There are a few good ones, but you're not gonna want all of them. You might get 2 of them and maybe upgrade each of them once. But after that, you just have money coming in with nothing to spend it on, except for the cabaret. And here is a location where you can spend 30 coins to get a point. And I get the idea, making being rich part of the viable strategy to becoming a legend is actually, I think, essential to the game's purpose. But the problem is, and this is only in my experience of 2 games, nearly everybody towards the end of the game is going to have too much money, and they're just going to be spending it at the cabaret to get points. It kind of, for me, is bothersome because they promised that I would get to do whatever I wanted, but in the end, we're all doing the same thing. And to me, that is not good. That is completely against the game's purpose. Now, there are a few other nitpicks like that. For instance, the gold cards that you get for each of your characters do a couple things wrong. You can choose to get, if you're playing the advanced mode, you get specific goals for your character. For instance, Annie Oakley has these 4 goals. Now here's the problem with them. There are a lot in this deck of a bunch of goals. There are a lot of repeats. A lot of characters are going to be doing the same thing, and they're all sort of generic, and they don't actually make me feel like I am more my character. They're kind of just these extra things you can do along the way, and this is just one example of, for me, what makes this game so close. And I feel like they could have done this better. I feel like it could have been either way more thematic, doing really specific things that your character would have done, or made a complete deck of really unique goals that anyone can have and made them incredibly mechanically interesting. But they're kind of in this weird middle ground where they sacrifice thematics and mechanics to make these gray area objectives that almost don't really matter. They're good to do and really important to do, but they don't feel like they add to the immersion. They kind of just feel like they take away from it. And even if the character-specific objectives were really fun and good, that's not a sandbox game anymore. You're just doing what your character would have done in the original stories, but isn't this game about telling your own version of the story? So, I get the idea, but the way that the items and money interact, the cabaret, and a few other things just kind of feel lackluster. They kind of feel like it was close. And to me, some of these things, honestly, could have been fixed just by playtesting the game a little more. And I don't claim to know the process. I don't know what they did to playtest the game, but to me it feels maybe unfinished, maybe unpolished. There, again, are a lot of great things here, but some things that just honestly fell flat for me, and doesn't take away enough for me to not want to play the game, but I know that for some people it will. It's not the most brilliantly designed game out there. There are some awesome things here, and it's really honestly an immersive, great, thematic, Wild West game that I highly recommend. But just know, it's not perfect. Upon playing it more, those things may end up becoming non-issues. Maybe actually the cabaret isn't as powerful as I thought. I don't know. Well, that's something that I'll find out as I play the game more, but until then, that's just my first impressions of it. It's just close. It's a really, really good game. Maybe it's not a great game, and that's okay. Jona, I seriously am glad I bought this game. There's no regrets at all for me. So, you recommended a great one. And these are just some nitpicks that I have about it. I wanted to be as completely honest as I could. Here's the thing about it. These are things that I might be able to fix just with some house rules. And that's a topic of discussion, whether you think that that's a good idea, a bad idea, whether you want to do it or not. I like to do it. I think that I'm going to potentially change some of the balancing of things. It's not the most intricately designed game, in my opinion, but it's still special. It still does some really, really cool things with the way that the Wanted and the Marshall track feel different. It's still got one of the best card systems in any game, in my opinion, especially for how simple it is. And it's still going to stay in my collection for all those reasons. That's the gist of my thoughts of this game. Again, thank you so much for recommending it to me, Jona. Alright, I am going to watch Jona's review of Aeon's End. I'm so excited to hear what she has to say. So if you want to watch that with me, click on this video right here and we'll go watch it together. I'm super excited again. Aeon's End is a great game and you're going to want to see their review.